There's your sound. Hopefully that'll sync everything up. Okay. Hello and welcome to a long and rambly video. At least that's my future prediction. If I'm psychic enough, I might win the lottery. But that would be horrible because then they'd want to take my picture and it's just not worth it. So, AngelLoader is now at version 1.0.9a. Not the most pleasant of version numbers with a letter after it, but and it seems to be relatively stable. I mean, who knows? There could be a new message right about now in the forums where somebody just had it explode their cat, and they'll be horrible exploding your cat. It's funny because I said the same thing twice. Anyways, so yeah. So I'd just like to talk about a few things here. Right, so now that bug fixes seem to have tapered off a bit, cross your fingers, there's some features I'd like to talk about. So there's sort of four features. It could also be three. This is a longer, rambly video. It's funny because I said it twice. Okay, so basically, a couple of different people have asked me about dark mode. Now, dark mode is a very popular thing these days. A lot of operating systems and apps are starting to support it. Makes a sort of pleasant, not eye-blinding thing for us people that stay up too late at night, when really the root problem is we just shouldn't be on our computers at night. But anyways, yes. But this is something that I would like to do, because I want AngelLoader to be sort of as modern as I can make it, and there's a few stumbling blocks to that, and maybe I'll talk about those as well. So, okay, so dark mode. So this is a thing that is a sort of supported feature globally in Windows 10, or at least partially. I don't know. I don't use Windows 10 very much. I'm a sluggard who doesn't upgrade. I've got it on my laptop, but not on my main dev machine, so I haven't really tried it. Maybe it's not fully complete yet, but the point is, if you are using a UWP application, and I'll get to what that means later, which is basically, it means like a Windows 10 only application is kind of what it means. Also, it means you can only use it on the Microsoft Store, and you don't want to support that walled garden crap. Then you can choose to make your app be like support dark mode, and it kind of does it automatically, as I understand it. I haven't been able to try this, because but so it might be really easy if you did a Windows 10 only UWP app. But AngelLoader is not, for various reasons. Basically, I mean, for those of you who don't know anything about coding or programming or whatever, I guess I'll sort of run down this. This thing that you see here, this graphical user interface that you see here is, this is like the standard Windows interface. It kind of looks like standard Windows. Got your gray and your light gray and your Windows 7 style buttons and whatever. AngelLoader is running on the .NET framework, which is like a way to code against, I don't know, it's complicated stuff. Code, very complicated. You type CLS and you realize this isn't QBasic, and then you die. So, this is really rambly. But basically, this is called Windows Forms, this user interface right here. When you're using the .NET framework, there's basically two main UI sort of libraries that you can use. There's Windows Forms and there's WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, but nobody calls it that. They call it LKV, also WPF. So this is Windows Forms, and this is basically like the really old, venerable, classic Windows API. It's like software rendered. It's really stable, but it's kind of limited. And the reason I used it is like for various complicated reasons that maybe I'll get into later as well. I sort of keep putting things off till later. You might almost think that I'm lazy and can't be bothered to make $1 million by being psychic. $1 million. So, okay, to the two frameworks, and this ties into the dark mode thing. Windows Forms, since it's using the really old Windows Visual API thing, there's zero support for any kind of dark mode at all. If you want to make one, you have to make everything yourself. And I've done a bit of testing to see how feasible that would be. And I think I could sort of make most of the interface have a dark mode by doing it manually, but there would be little bits and pieces of it that don't quite look good because I'm hacking it. So I'm not sure if I want to go down that route and do all this work and end up with a subpar result anyway. And I'll kind of show you what I've got here. This is the code. See, this is the master branch here, and if I go to the dark mode branch, I did a little bit of a test where I tried to make the tab section please run. Visual Studio 2019 is slightly less slow, but it's still slow. So I did some testing here. Now you can see, oh yeah, I didn't test, like these controls can also be made dark, but I didn't do that. I just wanted to test the tab control. So you see, like, for the most part it works, but then like there's these little bits that are still the default colors here, the lines on the side and that. This is like, you can't do anything about that as far as I'm aware. I tried all the normal stuff and it's just the color that it is. So little bits and pieces like that are going to show up. The scroll bars, you can't do anything about those. Well, sometimes you can, but it's inconsistent and blah, blah. So these are still going to be like regular style. Buttons, you have to sort of change all of their styles. So for example, you could kind of change, like this one, for example. You could say, you want to say flat appearance, and then you want to say, no, flat style, you want to say flat. That way you can actually customize the thing, and then you just go back color and you go like that or something. And I mean, obviously you'd want to play around with the settings a bit, but that's basically how you do it. You'd have to set all your buttons like that. So if I'm just keeping Windows Forms, this is about the best I'm going to be able to do, and it's not great. So I don't know if I really want to do it like that. Now, as I said, there's another option for a UI framework for .NET, and that's WPF. WPF is a lot more flexible, and it's better in many ways, but there are certain things about the WPF interface that are no good. For instance, this list of fan missions here. Do you see how if you make this whole thing like that big and you scroll all the way through? In fact, let me just even add another folder here even. There, I'll get all of it. So it's huge list. So see how you scroll through and it's like super fast to scroll like that? That is because in Windows Forms, you can kind of say, basically what happens is you can set it to a mode where you set the number of rows that there should be on the data grid view, which is what this is. You tell it like row count equals whatever. So basically what you do is you grab the list of FMs and you take the list of FMs, like the number of them. So say there's like 1560 or something. I think there's 1540 in here, a bunch of duplicates in there, but yeah, 1540 FMs. So you say row count equals 1540, and then as soon as you say that, it will start trying to draw rows. And whenever it tries to draw a cell, which is like one of these, that, like these are cells in the grid there. So as soon as it tries to draw a cell, it will fire off, oh, excuse me, this is the wrong one. It will fire off this cell value needed event here, and it will pass you this object here that will tell you which row and which cell it is wanting to draw. So then you just take that data and you just do a switch statement. So just like selecting a case. And you just say, like, depending on which column it is, you just pass it a value, and then it puts that value in the cell. It draws it in. So because you can do this, you can have very fine control over the performance. Because if you just say you want to do as little work in here as possible, just a few if statements, very little conversion, mostly we're just passing values straight through, and you can see what it's doing here with your own eyes, and you can control it, you can get extremely high performance. With WPF, you cannot do this. It just does whatever it wants. It's got this data binding, which is this automatic thing that I can't stand because you don't have any control or visibility as to what it's doing behind the scenes. And it could be doing all kinds of slow stuff and you don't even know. So it means that this list in WPF is super slow. Like if you try to sort it, look how fast sorting is. Instant. With WPF, it's like literally a half second. Now, that's not the end of the world, but it's just like a crap user experience, right? So, don't mind this, it's a secret. But so that's kind of a problem. And I really want performance because I'm not willing to accept this kind of slow, laggardly crap that people are all willing to accept these days for no reason at all. I want speed. So, unfortunately, WPF is not really an option because of that dumbness. So, I'm kind of stuck here. you know, if I want to use the .NET framework, which I do because I'm afraid of C++ and I've never used pointers. Yeah, that's just the problem you run into. Now, there are other options, though. There are other UI frameworks, and mostly they're not for .NET. Like there's Qt, there's GTK, and those are for C++. But there are .NET wrappers for them, which means you can kind of use them in .NET, although I haven't tried it, but I'm looking into it. Qt is a cross-platform framework that I'm interested in, and I've tried a few apps that use it. Let me see if I can find one. So this is Sigil. It's a sort of an EPUB type reader, and the QI interface seems pretty full-featured and pretty snappy, like pretty quick, right? I mean, so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for performance, and I'm looking for at least the features of Windows Forms, and it seems to be like pretty quick, and you can drag stuff around, and you can like, nothing seems to be laggy on the apps I've tried, so it seems like a good idea. I don't know how to get it working with .NET. You can, but it's a big learning curve. But the thing is, if I'm going to take a learning curve, WPF, I'm not that familiar with it either, and it's a huge learning curve. It works all terribly stupid, complicated and stuff. But if I went with WPF, even if I could get the performance working, it would still be Windows only, and it would still be Windows only. I'm sorry, I had another reason, but it's non-existent. It would still be Windows only, and you might be thinking, well, Thief is Windows only, so it doesn't really matter. Well, Thief is Windows only, but apparently it runs fine on Wine, which is a Windows sort of non-emulation layer for Linux. Basically, you can run Windows things on Linux. Apparently, the Thief games work fine in Wine, and apparently FMCell works fine in Wine as well, which means if you want to play Thief with an FM selector on Linux, you can. And I had one request for making this work on Linux, and I'm kind of interested to do so if I can eventually. And having a cross-platform framework would be a big step in that direction because it's not happening now as it stands. Also, I have tried out at least one Qt app that has dark mode in it, and apparently it looks like it's pretty easy to just swap your themes, so I wouldn't have to do anything manually, I don't think. So that would also make that really easy. It would make AngelLoader's install size kind of larger, and at first I thought it would make it unacceptably large, but it looks like I might be able to get it down to something reasonable. So, I mean, obviously I don't like any extra file size if I can help it, but yeah, if it gives us a bunch of benefits, then I guess it's worth it. So that's dark mode and possible Linux support. The one stumbling block with Qt or really any other third-party framework is rich text format reading, right? If you, let's go back to the non-screwy thing, shall we? Rich text. So let me find a fan mission here. So this one, for example, this is a rich text file, an RTF file. That is a Microsoft format. And the way I'm reading it here is I'm not reading it manually. I'm just passing it off to this RTF box, and it's reading it all for me and displaying it for me. Sometimes not 100% correctly, but hey, whatever. Now, I have done a search, and at least 300 or so fan missions out of the 1,000 or so that are released have got RTF readmes. So it's critical that I be able to support these. Unfortunately, not too many non-Microsoft software supports them. So if I use any other framework, I'm not going to be able to just easily load RTF files automatically. I'm going to have to figure out a way to convert them and then load them. So that's going to be a stumbling block as well. But yeah, I don't think it's insurmountable, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. Another thing is a couple of people have asked for System Shock 2 support. Now, it's not in there at the moment. Now, you may remember that I LP'd System Shock 2 years and years ago, I think back in 2011 or something like that, maybe early 2012. And I don't know. I'm not a great big fan of it. I find the general design of like giving you an XOR choice in any game to be just really stressful and not fun. So I haven't played it at all, and I don't really want to have to support it if it's going to take a lot of work because I don't really want to play it. But I figured, well, maybe I'll try to add it. And I haven't added it yet because it's actually more complicated, because apparently System Shock 2 fan missions are a great deal more lax with their zip folder structures, and they often just tell you to dump it straight in your install folder, and it would trip up my scanner and my installer because they have subfolders inside, so it's more complicated, and I've been focused on just fixing bugs that people report and stuff. But if we start to level out and there's nothing more to do, then I guess I might start working on that and see how it goes. So, yes. Also, DPI scaling, that's right. A lot of people are having more high DPI monitors, like 4K or what have you, UHD or whatever they call it. I don't have one myself. The two monitors I've got are both 1920 by 1200, my favorite resolution. Hey, I just said something moderately funny in a moderately funny voice after hours of just total dry blah 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 talk. Awesome. So yes. In Windows, you can zoom to like a certain percentage, I guess, depending on how many pixels your display has. I guess you get different percentage options or something. Windows Forms is also not very good with scaling. You can kind of do it, and I've coded it so that like nothing absolutely horrible happens if you scale it, because it used to be that this thing, if you scaled it, it would be like that for some reason, and like everything in the split container would be like bleh. So I fixed that, but it's still kind of, if you scale it, the text ends up a little blurry because it's in the mode where it just like scales it up just like a static picture, because I coded this thing before I remembered high DPI was a thing, so I didn't code it in a way that would work if I didn't do that. So that's another thing that I'm trying to smooth out eventually. Like, it's functional now for high DPI, but I do want to make a better experience with properly sharp fonts and images that scale up without blurring and stuff like that. So that's kind of also what I'm thinking with the Qt framework. It seems to have proper support for DPI scaling and all of that. So I'm going to try to bash my head against Qt for a while and see if I can't figure out how to use it and figure out how to use it with .NET. And if I can, then that will be like a good sort of update for the future. But as it is, AngelLoader seems to be functional, and so it's usable at least, and then there's nothing catastrophically urgent that needs addressing that I know of. And just watch there be something. But anyways, yes, so that's that. Another feature, the last one that I can think of for now, is that you see this patch and customize tab. I left a lot of space here on purpose. This is like for adding DML files, like patches to make old FMs work and stuff. You can open your FM folder. And I'm thinking there was a lot of stuff that I used to do when I did LPs back in the day, where I would, or if I did informational videos, where I would sometimes want to switch values in the cam-ext file a lot. Like, I might want to switch to force windowed or not force windowed. I might want to sometimes switch old mantling on for old dark missions so that I didn't accidentally mantle somewhere where I wasn't supposed to. That's just a personal thing. Other people might not want to do that, but it's just like a thing that I used to do. And, missions can have an fm.config file, which is basically, it's the same kind of stuff can be set here as can be set in the cam-ext.config, but you could just override it. So if you wanted to have a specific mission have Bloom, but maybe not others, then you could add an fm.config that specifies Bloom through this patch area here eventually, or just like any setting you want. And I'm thinking of having just like a list of settings. Like every time there's a new dark version comes out, I'll go through the list of settings and like look at the descriptions and sort of like add them in here so that you could like know what they do. And then there could be like a custom one where you could type new ones in case that I haven't gotten to new ones yet or something. And like per mission you can set those. So that'd be super great. And you see how that's why I made this this backup all changed files by default, so that way you can just put in a custom fm.config and you can always have it be there. Even if you uninstall it and reinstall it, it'll just put it right back again, so really seamless. And another thing I was thinking of doing is that, like for, say you want to temporarily run in non-full screen or something, you could have like maybe an advanced install, like below here might be like an advanced install option where you can say, or no, not advanced install, play, like an advanced play or like a play with temporary settings kind of option where you can choose to like play the thing with full screen disabled just that one time, or any option like that, disabled or enabled just that one time kind of thing. Because this is, I don't know how many people would use that, but this is the sort of thing that sort of a techie like me would have loved to have had back in the day. So that's kind of another thing that I'm wanting to eventually add. And I guess now I'm done talking about things that I want to eventually add, so I'll just end on this note. This is a heck of an ugly icon, but it's the only thing I could think of. Bye!